Welcome to True Crime with Strategic Eyes.
Strategic back again. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys had a great week so far. I mean, for most of you guys, this is the last day that you have to worry about working. You get your weekend off, spend time with your family, handle your business, the whole nine. For some of us, we still got to work. So something interesting happened to me today. I went to work in the morning time, been up since 5 in the morning. The boss is like, hey, listen, we're kind of short on the night shift for Saturday. Anybody want to volunteer? I said, listen, I'll make you a deal, man. Let me leave early so I can catch my daughter's basketball game, and then I'll work that shift. So tomorrow I'm not going to work the morning time. I'm actually going to work the nighttime, the 1 a.m. shift. Well, 3 to 1 a.m. shift. So I get to stay up late. So I decided, you know what? Let me cover this beautiful topic that we have here to talk with you guys. And I think it's beautiful. The reason why I think it's beautiful is because it really shows the character of Stephan Stearns. So it's a late night one. It's going to benefit some people. We usually don't do lives this late unless we really, really have to. But, you know, there's a lot of the audience that's up late, working during the nighttime, want to keep company with Strategic Guys. So here we are, spending time with you guys. So once again, appreciate you for coming through. Appreciate you guys for showing me that love. It's an impromptu live, but we got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try and get through it, rather, in a reasonable amount of time, so I still can get some semblance of some rest before I work all night tomorrow. And definitely I'm not looking forward to it, but, you know, teamwork makes the... What's the saying? Teamwork is the dream work? I don't know. Whatever. Big shout out to my moderators who came through. I was about to text message them, and then unfortunately the intro ran out. So I was like, man, I got to let my mods know that I'm doing a live, but whatever. So we're here, guys. So wow. The new court documents that just came out, it's a whole bunch of legal mumbo jumbo, but I'm here to help you figure it out. And one thing that we're going to see that is a pretty much the narrative of these filings that just came out from Stephan Stearns' legal team. We have those. We're going to put them on our Patreon for free. Those are free documents. You don't have to pay for them. So if you go on our Patreon, so if we don't have to pay to get them, we're not going to charge you to become a member to see them. So it's going to be on our Patreon, but it's going to be free for everybody. So if you have a Patreon account and you just go to the Strategic Eyes Show, our Patreon page, you'll be able to see it without becoming a member. So I just want to make sure that's clear. We are not charging people to see these court documents, but the Patreon is a place where we store these documents and make them available for everybody. And 95% of the documents that we put on our Patreon are for free. So make sure that you become a member of the Strategic Eyes Show on our Patreon for free. If you don't want to get the added content, just be a free member so that you can get access to these documents when we post them. And of course, in time, if you want to get that extra, the extra videos that we put out, the extra content, that exclusive content, then you'll upgrade whenever you feel like it, if you ever feel like it. But make sure you're at least a free member on our Patreon so that you can get these documents in one place. Because when we get them, we post them there. All right, big shout out to Abigail Rose, who's a 3-month member on the patrol level. Thank you so much for supporting us. All right, so the theme of these documents is Stephan Stearns is a coward. Yeah, I said it. Well, I've said it 1,000 times before. It's not like I'm making breaking news by saying that. It's not like I'm being very brave. It's not like I'm being very controversial by saying that. Stephan Stearns is a coward. That's what we see here. What we see here is a guy that allegedly, we'll just say allegedly because, of course, he has not been adjudicated in a court of law, but allegedly took the life of a beautiful little girl. He had no qualms about that, ladies and gentlemen. He had no issues, no mental or moral or ethical hangups with committing that crime against this little girl. He had no issues with that. But now that it's time for him to face the music for his crimes, oh, he's got some issues, ladies and gentlemen. He does not want to die. Let's say that again. Say it for the people in the back of the room. Stephan Stearns, put the God voice on. Stephan Stearns does not want to die. And his legal team is trying to pull out all of the stops, all of the legal stops, the legal loopholes that they could find to try and defeat the state's desire to give him the death penalty. never, ever fails to shock me, to riddle me, to entertain me, to confuse me. How, once again, these guys have no qualms taking your life, stealing from you, deceiving you, robbing you, defrauding you. But when it's time for those people, those type of people, to face the music of their actions, they never want to face the consequences. I would say that if this guy truly loved Maddie, which he says he does, but we all know that whatever love he had for her was sick and demented, that he would embrace death. But that's not what's happening. It's not what's going to happen. They're fighting for his life, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to go up and bring some of these documents up, bring an article up so we can read what's going on, go through it, and then we'll call it a day. But hopefully we'll call it a day with a better understanding of what exactly is happening in Stephan Stern's criminal case, because the case is allegedly scheduled to start soon. Now, I think it said in a month or two is going to start. I haven't paid much attention to that. I'm going to tell you why. Some people are like, strategic. You're covering the story. What do you mean you're not paying attention to when the court date is starting? Not paying attention because it's not going to start in a month. It's not going to. They're going to keep asking for continuance. We need this. And now the discovery is in. We're disputing some of the discovery. We didn't get certain things. They're going to keep stalling because they want to keep him alive. When he's in court, in the trial, he's closer to death. When he's in county jail and they're going through motions, he is alive. He's farther away from capital punishment, from that ultimate guilty verdict and that sentencing verdict that's going to put an end to his miserable life. And the job of those attorneys is not to find Stephan Stern not guilty. It's not their job. There's sometimes that you had that case where guilt is not, it's not in question. The job of his attorneys right now is to get him life in prison and not the death penalty. So somebody's birthday, I think I saw it in my peripheral. Somebody's having a birthday. I want to give him a big shout out. If I could find that. If not, then, we'll have to catch you another time. But I think I saw somebody say, happy birthday. I love birthdays. I'm one of those people. I'm so sentimental. Says May, happy birthday. I guess the person's name is May. Happy birthday, May. I don't see May saying, oh, it's my birthday. Oh, man, here he goes. I'm here with you on my birthday. Hope y'all is well and safe. Say hello, y'all. Hey, what's up? So hello, y'all. What's up? What's up, May Pierine? May Pierine. I think that's how you say it. Happy birthday to you, and thank you for joining me and sharing your birthday with me. That's very special. Somebody wants to share their birthday with you. Don't even know you. That must really mean you hold me in high regard, and I do appreciate that, and I hope I don't ever betray, that respect that you're giving me. All right, cool. Let's keep going. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring this article up. Let me share it with you. So that you guys can see it and are not in the way. Big shout out to Ochi J with a $5 Canadian super chat. Thank you. Says, give him what he asks, a prison cell housing. No, we want to give him capital punishment. We want to put him in the dirt. That's what we want. We don't want your Canadian sensibilities. Keep those Canadian sensibilities in Canada. We are American. And we want him dead. All right, let's keep going. Stephan Stern argues potential death sentence is unconstitutional. Now, I got to tell you, we have the documents. We're going to read through some of them, right? But what I thought that they were going to argue is that Florida changed the amount of jurors that are required to actually find you guilty, or rather actually sentence you to death, right? I forgot what the numbers are, and I apologize for that because I've been fielding a lot of information. The Strategic Eyes research crew is on fire. Mind you, everything that we got today, even this article that you can't see, that you will be able to see now, was brought to you by the Strategic Eyes research crew, especially the court documents. They got that from me. So they're on fire, but they're working so hard for me right now, and I'm just getting inundated with Madeline Soto evidence, new stuff like this, and, of course, Naziah Harris stuff, which is even more stuff. Like Naziah Harris case is on fire right now. So I just going through all of the materials so I could give you guys a quality show. I didn't have time to look up the exact change in the jury. So it's 8 now. I think somebody said in the chat. I'm not sure, but whatever. It used to be unanimous, and now it has to just be 8, I believe, from what they say in the chat. Got to verify that for myself later, so just take that preliminarily that it's 8, right? Other people are saying that it's 8, so maybe it's 8, but remember, Strategic has to see it for itself for him to say definitively that it is what you guys say, right? So I thought that that would be the angle that, or one of the many angles, because they can have multiple angles, which is, you can see that they're dropping multiple different motions to try and, exclude evidence, excluding testimony, say that the whole death penalty phase is unconstitutional, whatever. I thought this would be one of their strategies to say, hey, listen, it's unconstitutional for you to go from unanimous to 8, because when they changed the law, that's what people were saying would be the argument for people who would be facing the death penalty under that new policy. That they would sue and say, hey, you can't make it 8, it has to be unanimous. But so far, Stephan Stern's attorneys have not taken that route. They're probably going to take it now because they're watching the Strategic Eye show. But I'm surprised I didn't see it prior. Big shout out to Arnie Ayalo for the $4.99 super chat. Says, thank you for all you do. I appreciate your voice of reason. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Guys, make sure you hit that like button. Support the channel. So here we go. Kissimmee, Florida. Stephan Stearns is doing all he can to prevent a potential death sentence as his attorneys filed a series of motions this week seeking to have the death penalty struck on the basis that it's unconstitutional. Look at mug. Lord of mercy. That's a mug on that man. Very, very, very evil looking person. He looks like he's from like a horror movie, to be honest with you. I think somebody also dropped gift memberships. Oh, Dr. Cataclysm with 5 gift memberships. Thank you, Dr. Cataclysm. Very kind and generous of you, and do appreciate it. And everybody who received that gift membership, please do thank Dr. Cataclysm for his generosity, because now you get access to our members-only show. So let's keep going. That's a really big thing, and I hope you guys enjoy it and continue your memberships when your gift membership is over. So Stephan Stearns was charged 2 days after 13-year-old Madeline Soto disappeared. Prosecutors are seeking a death sentence for Stearns for the murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto, his girlfriend's daughter. Stearns is separately facing dozens of charges that he sexually assaulted Soto after more than 1,500 photos and videos were found on his phone. The 2 cases are being tried separately, and Stearns is scheduled to stand trial for the sex crimes next month. I don't think that that's going to happen. I highly doubt that that's going to happen. They are definitely going to ask for more time, especially when you see all these different motions coming out. Definitely a sign that they're going to ask for more time. All right. Stearns' attorney in the murder case filed 3 separate motions on Thursday seeking to have the death penalty disqualified as a potential punishment, arguing it's unconstitutional. All 3 motions argued the different aspects of the 1996 Florida statute that outline aggravating factors are overly vague and subject to be applied in an arbitrary and inconsistent manner. So I'll tell you guys what they're trying to do. All right, so we go over here. This is one of those motions. Let me see if I can make it a little bit smaller so it can fit into the screen. I have to do my part as well by, oh, this is rough. Sorry about that, guys. I see I need to make a minor adjustment. Perfect. Then now we can zoom in. Perfect. All right, so what's happening in this particular one right here? Is it in this one? I don't know. I don't know if it's this one that's behind me. It's multiple ones. See, we have a whole bunch of them, and they all are basically arguing the constitutionality of the death penalty, as the article said. But let me tell you something that they're trying to definitely hammer on. Aggravating factors. Let me find that one. Find that one. Here we go. This is the one, actually. I had the right one. The aggravating circumstances. Aggravating circumstances shall be limited to the following: this is what the actual statute says, right? So let me start it from number one. This is 921.141, subsection 6. It says, sets out the aggravating circumstances that may be considered in determining whether or not to impose a death penalty in a first-degree murder case. It provides in pertinent part, aggravating circumstances shall be limited to the following. The victim of the capital felony was particularly vulnerable due to advanced age or disability, or because the defendant stood in a position of familial or custodial authority over the victim. So they're saying that's vague, but what they're also trying to say is that they don't really want, see, the prosecution is charging him with the sex abuse first and then the murder later. But he's charged for both, but like they're trying him, I should say, rather. They don't want the conviction from the CSAM, which is a death penalty case in itself. But whether that jury decides to give him the death penalty or not, they don't want the conviction of the abuse and the CSAM, which is to be used as a aggravating circumstance / factor to then be used against him in the murder trial. Because what they're basically looking at is there's a possibility that a jury might just decide to give him life in prison for the sexual abuse and the CSAM. Because remember, in that trial, they're not going to be basically going into Madeline not being alive. They can't talk about that. It would prejudice the jury. So they have to just basically talk about Madeline being abused by him in the way that he abused her. But now, because of this Florida law, when he now goes to face the jury for his murder trial, they'll now be able to bring this up during that penalty phase and say, listen, this is an aggravating factor. You should definitely give this guy the death penalty because he raped Madeline Soto, in addition to him being convicted now of murdering Madeline Soto during that sentencing phase. And they're trying to say, no, that's not constitutional. These are two very closely related cases, and we don't think that you should be able to use this conviction against him in the murder trial. I think they're grasping for straws, to be honest with you. I think they're grasping for straws. But nonetheless, it's an argument worth making. And what I see is that he has very competent attorneys. Very competent attorneys. Now, competent attorney doesn't mean that this attorney is going to say something revolutionary that's going to make the court defy logic and do something. Competent meaning that they're at least trying. They're trying to challenge these laws on legal standing, at least. Trying to, pick and choose, of course, what they always do, in court, find these vague and obtuse rulings in the past. And try and say, hey, you know what? These are connected, and you can use this as an example as to why you should agree with me and not with the prosecution. But they are very competent. They are trying their best. He has a good set of attorneys, and they're definitely trying to save his life. And if you don't believe that it's possible, and you guys know I always forget this douchebag's name, but I'm gonna look it up. I'm not gonna ask the chat, because every time I say, chat, what's the name of this guy? What's the name of this guy? And then you guys tell me. You guys are awesome. Cruz. There we go. Nicholas Cruz. I looked it up myself this time. If you guys don't think that it's possible that he could get away with it, you're insane. Why? Because Nicholas Cruz got away with it. And when I say got away with it, of course they're guilty. But Nicholas Cruz deserved the death penalty, in my opinion. He did not deserve to live, just like Stephan Stearns, in my opinion, does not deserve to live. But Nicholas Cruz is doing life in prison right now. Big shout out to Jamie Peace with a $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Nicholas Cruz, and this is my problem with situations like Nicholas Cruz and Stephan Stearns and stuff like that. These guys sometimes get out. Let me look up another name that I was reading about earlier, but I want to tell you the name before, I don't just want to tell you their story. I want to tell you their name. I want to tell you the name. Here you go. This is the guy. He's clicking real quick so I get his full name. Adrian Peeler. These guys get out sometimes. Not always. But when you leave a guy in prison for the rest of his life and he's living 35, 40 years, political tides change. Political attitudes change. Did you guys think for 1 second that we would think the way we think about criminal justice reform prior to 2019? But then we had George Floyd, and after that, everything changed. Bail reform, criminal justice reform. I mean, the bad guys became heroes. And I'm not saying anything bad against George Floyd. I'm using his situation because it was the catalyst for what changed afterward. George Floyd was a victim. We all saw that with our own eyes. But a whole lot of bad guys got clemency. A whole lot of bad guys got deference because George Floyd died. I dare say a whole lot of people who didn't deserve to be treated the way that they were treated in terms of being absolved of their sins were treated as though they were heroes. So my news feed, a Connecticut drug kingpin by the name of Adrian Peeler, was released on clemency by Joe Biden. It's not about politics. All presidents do it. It's not like Joe Biden knew who this guy was. Groups, aides, activists, they give these guys a group of names, thousands of people, and they say, okay, I signed off on it because I assume you guys did your vetting. This guy was a drug kingpin in Connecticut. This guy allegedly ordered a guy to get killed, right? When the guy was killed, an 8-year-old boy and his mother witnessed it. The 8-year-old boy was going to be the star witness against this drug kingpin guy. Guess what? He then had that 8-year-old boy and his mother murdered. He got sentenced to pretty much almost a life sentence in federal prison for being a kingpin, for the murders, for all that stuff, and he just got clemency. His name just got snuck in to the clemency list, and now he's getting out in June. Now, don't get me wrong. He did like 30-something years in prison, but he was supposed to do the rest of his life. When you give these guys these long life sentences, you don't know what might happen in the future. You don't know what might happen in the future. I don't want the possibility of Stephan Stearns getting out. I don't want that possibility to happen. 10 years from now, I don't want that possibility to happen when he's 80 or 90 years old. I want Stephan Stearns to stay in prison for the rest of his life. So if you guys think, there's so much evidence, there was tons of evidence against Nicholas Cruz when he walked through the hallways of that school and slaughtered those children. Yet he's doing life in prison in Florida, a death penalty state. You think that it's guaranteed that Stephan Stearns is going to do the gas chamber? Then you are not in tune with human nature, because when it comes to humans, humans are unpredictable. Anything can happen. All it takes is one person who has a philosophical difference with the death penalty. One person, and death penalty is off the, well, not in Florida, 4 people, I guess. And death penalty is off the case. Wow, that's a big super chat. Big shout out to David with $1.99 super chat, man. Appreciate you, bro. This great show is always strategic. In my honest opinion, capital crimes should be punished to the max and carried out swiftly. And I'm a big fan of that too. Even if they give Stephan Stearns, first of all, thank you so much. Before I go any further, I'm about to jump into your comment, but geez Louise, thank you so much for that support. $199 super, $199, so people don't get it twisted and think it's $1.99. $199 super chat from David. We do appreciate you, David. Thank you so much. He's also a moderator, a longtime supporter of the show. We do appreciate you, David. Thank you so much, my brother. We also have to take David's comment into account as well, because we give Stephan Stearns capital punishment. It takes like 10 to 13, 14 years for him to actually be put to death after all his appeals are exhausted. I think that should be streamlined as well. It should not take a decade to put somebody to death when you sentence them to death. Don't you think for 1 second, ladies and gentlemen, that Stephan Stearns' death penalty conviction is in the bag, that somehow this is something that's going to happen, and we're just waiting on bated time for it to happen, for us all to celebrate and say, guilty, guilty, guilty. Yeah, well, you know what? Nobody's guilty until the jury says so. And nobody is sentenced until the judge hands it down. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, guys, because guess what? Stephan Stearns' attorneys, they're not out there throwing in the towel. They're not doing that. They're still fighting for him. They are fighting for his life. Keep going, guys. You guys are awesome, man. Very generous today. We do appreciate it, man. You know, this month was kind of tough for us. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to turn this into me moaning and crying about how YouTube is so unfair to us, but it's the truth. This was a very bad month for the show. It was a very bad month because almost every single show that we put out was demonetized, and therefore we got almost no YouTube revenue. So most of what we took in for the show for this month came from super chats, from memberships, and that's it pretty much. Because mostly all the videos that we put out were demonetized. Pretty much. And that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And I see other YouTube creators saying the same thing, especially in the true crime sector. You know, and somebody in the chat, RFL says, why? Or LF rather says, why? Because we're talking about this stuff. Because throughout my commentary, regardless of how I try and spin it, I'm going to end up saying rape. See? One strike against me. I'm going to end up saying little girl, child. And these are key words, but I just can't talk YouTube speak without feeling like I'm crazy. I can't. I have to express myself. I'm here to express myself and give you guys the best of what I have to offer. And if I'm over here, you know, using all these code words and sounding like I'm a Russian spy or something like that, it just doesn't feel right. And then so the bot just, boom. And then when the ones that you see are monetized, they monetized those after we already got our peak viewing. It took them 5-7 days before they finally said, no, you didn't, you're okay, we're going to monetize the show. Nobody's watching it by then. They're on to the next topic because we don't do longevity shows. Our shows are what is the news of today. And the people who are interested in this topic is going to flock to it. They're going to watch it, and then they move on. We're not putting out content that you're going to come back and watch 2 weeks from now. We're putting out the content that's relevant right now. These docs just came out. We're covering these docs. And guess what? They're not relevant a week from now. David said we're almost to 100,000. It's a fact. We are almost to 100,000 subs, and we're looking forward to it. And I'm not going to lie to you. When we get to that 100,000, I will be hanging up that plaque. I will be hanging up that plaque. So I can't wait for us to get there, and I appreciate you guys. Dr. Kazim says that true crimes were strategic, guys. I started watching you when you had almost no followers. Now you got 82,000. That's great stuff. And thank you so much, Dr. Cataclysm. I remember those days. I remember you. I remember David. I remember you guys who's been with me for such a long time. Erica B. been with me for such a long time when I had just a couple dozen subs. And now look at us now. We're spreading the word, and we're trying to bring the voice to the voices to the masses, right? Appreciate you guys. One more, and then we'll go back to the topic. Excuse me. Saw something about 500,000 subs. I want to read that. Tickled me. Shula Butler says, watch out, strategic. We'll get to 500,000 sooner than you think. Wow, we'll see. We'll see how that works. We'll see if people could I mean, listen, if I get to 500,000 subs, I'll retire. I only got, I think, a year and a half to retire. So if we were to get to a 500,000 subs, that would mean that the show would be very successful, and I'd be able to pretty much support my family. And then I'd retire, and I'd give you guys 100% of me, and then we just be a YouTuber. So listen, that's the goal. If you guys want me to do YouTube full time, well, I'm certainly not leaving my job right now because I got bills to pay. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm tired. And although I love what I do and I bring 1,000% to the work that I do, I'm tired. I've been doing it for a long time. So if we get to a 500,000 subs, if we get to 1,000,000 subs, I will retire. That's a fact. I'll put those papers in and I'll retire. And this is what I'll do full time and bring voice to the voiceless full time. All right, let's get back to it. All right, so this one right here, trying to get the right one. This emotion limine, whatever. Never knew how to say it. But anyway, this motion basically is like an exclusion motion. It's like, we want you to not allow the jury to see X, Y, and Z. You fill in the blanks because it might make them prejudicial against our client. So I think in some of these, what they're saying is like, hey, we don't want you to. Well, let me see which one this one is. Let's see. The search for constitutional error with painstaking care is never more exacting in capital case. No judicial qualification of witness and experts. So for the first one that they wanted, because they're asking for multiple things in this motion, is they're saying don't call these witnesses experts. Because if the court is calling them experts, then the court is basically saying you should believe everything that they say. But of course, the defense has the ability to cross-examine these folks. And so they're going to try and disqualify them and say, oh, well, don't listen to this expert because we don't think that they're as qualified as they would like us to believe. So they're saying, hey, listen, watch your language, court, when you talk about them as experts, because we don't want the jury to believe that everything they say is the gospel, basically. So that's the first point that they made. Kind of just trying to streamline this for you guys because there's a lot of legalese, and we'll just cut through the fat so you guys can really just understand what's being said and what the defense is trying to say. This one is the mention of grand jury indictment to veneer persons or jurors. So when they're doing voir dire, which is basically the process of selecting jurors for your case, which is something they have not done yet, and this is why they're trying to hash this out in these motions, is they're basically trying to say, listen, we don't want the jury, the prospective jury, to hear verbiage like Stephan Stearns was indicted by a grand jury. Because we feel like if the prospective jurors hear that he was indicted by a grand jury, then they're going to say, well, he must be guilty because if a grand jury said that there's enough evidence to move forward, then that means that he did it. But I think they're trying to go a step further and say, well, listen, the juror may not be sophisticated enough to understand what a grand jury indictment actually means, the gravity of it. That it just means that there's just a bare minimum to say that the case should move forward to a trial. So they're saying if you use that verbiage that Stephan Stearns was indicted by a grand jury, then it's prejudicial to Stephan Stearns, and they're asking that the court not allow that. So the third thing that they're asking for in this motion is no reading of the entire witness list by prosecutors. Basically, they don't want the jury, the prospective jury rather, to listen to a whole list of all these experts. Because once again, it's prejudicial. It's like, yo, wow, he got all these experts against him. He must really be freaking guilty. Wow. So he said prosecutors frequently seek to read the entire witness list to the veneer panel during jury selection when asked by the court to identify the names of persons who are on the state's witness list. The defense specifically objects to this practice and asks the court to order the prosecutor to read to the veneer panel only those witnesses prosecution intends to call and those witnesses who are reasonably foreseeable to be called by the prosecution. And so they'll have a whole long list of witnesses. It might be 50, sometimes even 100 people, especially for capital cases, but they're not going to call all those people. Those are people who are on notice that they might be called, but they're not going to call all of those folks. And so therefore, because of that, they don't want the jury to hear this long list and think, oh my God, they got everybody's testifying against Stephan Stearns. And that's basically in a nutshell what this particular motion was discussed, right? So let's go to the next one. I'm trying to break it down for you guys. Another one, motion to eliminate Basically, it's saying, well, let's read it and see where it's at, and then I'll explain to you guys. The defendant, Stephan Stearns, moves this court in limine for a ruling directing the state to refrain from making improper comments and penalty phase closing arguments. As the Florida Supreme Court has stated, improper prosecutorial comments and closing arguments may be grounds for disciplinary sanctions. So this is like, watch your language, kind of like, don't call him a idiot pedo. Don't do that. That's something strategic would say, but you're the prosecutor. You're not strategic. You can't call him a dirty, nasty, degenerate pedo. You can't call him that, okay? That's just inappropriate, okay? So it says, we're deeply disturbed as a court by continuing violations of prosecutorial duty, propriety, and restraint. We have recently addressed incidents of prosecutorial misconduct in several death penalty cases. They're not talking about these specific attorneys, rather, they're just saying, hey, listen, this is what we've observed from this prosecuting body in general, and we want to make sure this doesn't happen in our case with our client. Let's read. I haven't read this part, so I'm curious. Like, what are they citing as an example? As a court, we are constitutionally charged not only with appellate review, but also to regulate the discipline of persons admitted to the practice of law. This court considers this sort of prosecutorial misconduct be grounds for appropriate disciplinary proceedings. It ill becomes those who represent the state in the application of the law, blah, 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 whatever. I want to get some examples of what I'm looking for. Invocation of religious authority or biblical reference. So this is one of those examples. Don't talk about God. Don't talk about God, that Stephan Stearns will be judged by his maker. Don't talk about God. Don't say, God frowns upon this man or whatever. The next thing is injecting the juror's own fair emotion. Don't say that, this is the predator next door and your children could be next if you don't give him that death penalty, right? Don't say that. Don't invoke their own fears. These are reasonable, by the way. Admonishing the jurors that they would be cooperating with evil and with themselves be involved in evil, just like the defendant, but not voting for death. That's also very reasonable to say, what is wrong with your morality? How would Maddie feel if she found out you did not vote for Stephan Stearns to get the death penalty? These are reasonable. I will say that. Sending a message to the community deterrence. The defendant cannot be walking down the streets. That's another one. You don't want to guilt trip the jury. You want them to look at the facts and say, based off of the facts, based off of the law, you should get the death penalty. We don't want to guilt trip them into believing that they have no choice but to vote for the death penalty. The golden rule. Imagine the pain the victim felt as she drugs herself to the bedroom away from the defendant. The golden rule. By putting his own imaginary words in the victim's mouth, i.e., don't hurt me, take my money, take my jewelry, don't hurt me. And so that would translate to like the prosecutor saying Maddie's last words was, please don't kill me. I have so much more life to live. Like, you can't do that. You can't pretend like these would be her last words and use those last words to sway the jury. Now, I believe you can use actual last words. You can use actual last words. So if there was an audio recording or video recording of her last words, you can use that because that's not imaginary. That is actually what she said, and her words do matter. Let's keep going. Mistreatment of the law, duty as jurors to return a verdict for death. So you can't say it is your duty, your job. It's a necessity for you to find him guilty of and sentence him to the death penalty. You can't do that. Misstatement of the law, when aggravating factors outnumber mitigating circumstances, death is appropriate. You can't say that. The arguments that if the victim were here, she would want the defendant to be punished for what he did. You can't say that. You can't say that Maddie would agree with the death penalty. Nobody knows. She was so young. I'm sure nobody had that conversation with her, but there's a possibility she might have said, no, I don't want him to get the death penalty. I don't believe in it. So you can't say she would or she wouldn't. Nobody knows but Maddie, and she's no longer with us. Arguments that if the victim were here, we did that. Inviting the jury to disregard the law if the defendant was sentenced to life in prison. He could still be released someday because we all know in the past laws have changed. That's the argument I made, but I can make that argument because I'm not the attorney who's trying to give or the judge who's giving instruction to the jury. I'm not arguing the case of the jury. I'm not giving instruction to the jury. So that is actually my fear, but you also cannot tell that fear to the jury. Let's keep going. Arguing that any juror's vote for a life sentence would violate the juror's duty. Can't do that. That's more guilt tripping. Duty to impose death. That's more like unlawful application of the law. You don't have a duty to impose death. Let me read what the examiner said. I'm gonna ask you not to be swayed by pity or sympathy. I'm gonna ask you what pity, what sympathy, what mercy did the defendant show the victim? That's strong, but you can't do that. It's very prejudicial. Attacking mitigation as excuses or justification. The prosecutor's attack on Urban's mother as the mistress of excuses, and more importantly, his criticism of her because she never once tried to express concern, that remorse, that sorrow to the family of the victim. That's an example. Attacking mitigation as excuse or justification. Once again, you can't attack mitigation. Arguing against mercy. You can't tell them, don't have mercy. You have mercy, you're weak. What's wrong with you? Don't show him no pity. Let's keep going. Message to the defendant of a life sentence. Now this defendant wants a life sentence for robbing somebody and murdering them. What kind of message would that send? What kind of message would a life recommendation send to the defendant? Right. And I think I touched on that a little bit in the beginning of my intro, where I was like, hey, this guy had no qualms ending Madeline Soto's life, but now that it's time for him to pay with his own life, now he wants to live. Now he wants to fight. He wants to claw. He wants to do everything he can do to escape the death penalty. I can make that argument, which I've done already in the beginning of this show, but you can't do that with jury. Let's keep going. Comparing defendants to others, more worthy. Can't do that. Denigrating a defendant's mitigation expert for facts unrelated to his opinion in a case. It's kind of like looking down and talking bad about the psychologist who's testifying on behalf of the defense. Comments on defendant's silence. So you can't say just because Stephan doesn't want to testify, and we know he's not going to testify. No way on this green earth that Stephan Stearns is going to testify in this case. You can't hold that against him. You can't say, oh, he doesn't want to testify because he knows he's guilty and I'm going to give him the death penalty. Arguing a life sentence would be a miscarriage of justice. That's self-explanatory. Future dangerousness, that's also self-explanatory. You can't say, well, give him the death penalty because he might hurt other inmates or other people if he gets out. The victim impact, although the victim impact evidence itself was proper, the prosecutor's use of it in his closing argument comparing the choices made by a victim and those by Hayward was improper. So you can't use the victim's impact statement in your closing arguments. That's interesting. I had to read it. Improper arguments, non-statutory aggravating circumstances. You can't give false information or outdated information that's not applicable in the case. More improper argument, inflamed the passions and prejudices of the jury with the elements of emotion and fear. Like, look how big he was. He was a 6 foot tall pervert. And you can't do that. You can't, think about his dirty, slimy fingers touching her body. You can't say stuff like that. That's going to prejudice the jury. That's good. It makes our skin crawl when I said that. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible. Jesus, strategic. Why did you say that? But that's the same way that the jury would feel. Tina says, I got to head to tuck my husband in bed. Okay. Thank you. I'll definitely catch the ending in a bit. Have a good night, everyone. Well, you ain't coming back here. She says, you're going to catch us in a bit. Oh, well, maybe he's a 1 minute man or something. I don't know. Let's keep going. That's Tina's problem. Let's keep going. Improper argument. The defendant had a character of violence and prosecutorial expertise. I would submit now that the state does not seek the death penalty in all first-degree murders because it's not always proper, not always appropriate. Yeah, that's a big one because you're basically saying this one's special. We don't always seek it, but in this one, we are because this one's special. So that one's definitely, that would definitely not be fair to Stephan Stearns. And listen, we want it to be fair because fairness is what makes these cases stick. If we just want him to get convicted and we don't want to abide by our Constitution and we don't want to be fair to him, guess what? He's going to appeal, and then now we have to give him a new trial. That's possible. And we have to go through this all over again. Or maybe he gets resentenced. He got the death penalty because we didn't follow proper protocol, and he gets resentenced, and now he can only be resentenced for life in prison, and now death is not even on the table. We missed that opportunity because we were not fair and judicious in the way that we handled his case the first time around. We have to play by the rules. We have to be fair. So that's some of the stuff that we find in there. And this is kind of like, this is more motions that he's filing. And this one is, the short one is basically saying the victim impact evidence, particularly in a death penalty trial, is normally of an extremely emotional nature and has a high probability of unduly, unfairly, and unconstitutionally inflaming the jury, thereby making it impossible for the defendant to get a fair sentencing phase of his trial free of bias and prejudice. So this was kind of like piggybacking off of the previous one that we have read, where it's basically now taking out the victim impact and like fully explaining why they believe that this will be prejudicial to Stephan Stearns. And two, the definition of victim impact evidence in section 921.141, subsection 8 is vague, ambiguous, and difficult to interpret. In addition, victim impact is not considered an aggravating factor. 3, victim impact witnesses, particularly in a death penalty trial, can be extremely emotional and have great difficulty controlling their emotions while testifying. 4, the defendant, by the filing of this motion, maintains any and all objections to the use of victim impact evidence in its entirety. So they don't want any victim impact evidence shown to the jury at all. So let's see what their remedy is. Wherefore, if the court allows victim impact evidence, the defendant specifically requests that the court enter an order requiring the state to proffer, out of the presence of the jury, any and all victim impact evidence so that the court can determine not only whether the evidence is appropriate under statute authorizing it, but the witnesses themselves are emotionally capable of maintaining appropriate decorum before the jury so as to avoid unfairly and unconstitutionally inflaming the jury, causing prejudice to the defendant. So what are they asking? What is their cure? What is their remedy? Their cure is they want, before any victim impact evidence is shown to the jury. So if you're going to be testifying, if you're one of Maddie's friends, a school teacher, one of the students that were friend with her, next door neighbor, Jen Soto, Lord of mercy, to think about Jen Soto, I mean, that's her mother, but to think about Jen Soto doing the victim impact statement. Can we just get a moment of silence for Jen Soto giving a victim impact statement for her daughter, Madeline Soto, even though she's the one that led the lamb to the lion's den, in my opinion, at least? I want to give a moment of silence. I'm looking for the right sound. Let's see if we can find it. That's it. I got to mark that with a little star and a button. That's the one right there. Right. So Jen Soto. So what they're saying is that before, so let's use Jen Soto. So before Jen Soto can give her a victim impact statement to the jury, before that happens, Jen Soto has to now, the jury gets removed from the courtroom. She now gets questioned by the judge. They get to determine what is she going to say. She might have to read it. She might have to show, sometimes people pre-write their victim impact statement. She might have to show that to the judge, show that to the prosecution, show it to the defense attorney, and then they'll check her demeanor out. They'll read the victim impact statement, and then they'll determine if it can be shown to the jury and if she can read that victim impact statement without crying too much, without putting on a show. I wouldn't say putting on a show for any other parent who's doing a victim impact statement, but this is Jen Soto, so she's going to put on a show. And then if the judge allows it, then she'd be able to, well, they bring the jury back in and she'd be able to give her presentation to the jury. I think this is definitely going to be denied. I don't think that he's going to grant this motion. I think it's a reasonable motion to ask for when you're a defense counsel and you're trying to save the life of your client, but I do not think that this will be granted by the court. And do we have one more? We do. Motion to declare section 921.141 and or section 921.141 subsection D, Florida statutes and or corresponding jury instructions unconstitutional felony murder. Mr. Stearns is charged with committing first-degree murder. The state has filed notice of its intention to seek the death penalty if there is a conviction on a capital charge. In the state's notice, it has announced its intention to rely upon the aggravating factor contained in 921.141 subsection to subsection D. So this is once again, so a lot of these motions are kind of like, there was that main motion that kind of had all the lists of all the different things that they wanted excluded from the trial. And now they're like kind of like these separate motions are kind of like really like picking some of those and really going in on exactly why they feel like it should be excluded. And so in this one, they're explicitly saying that the prosecutor's plan is to get him convicted, hopefully for the death penalty, but if they can't get a death penalty, get him life in prison for the CSAM ex-abuse case. They want a conviction. Whatever happens, happens. But they want a conviction. Because if they don't get the death penalty, even if they don't get life, even if they just get like 20 years in prison, 30 years in prison, doesn't matter the prosecution, because they got that death penalty case that's going to also be on that murder case. And all they want is that conviction on the CSAM ex-abuse case so that they can now use that as an aggravating factor in the homicide case to therefore pretty much guarantee a death penalty verdict for Stephan Stearns. And what they're saying is, we don't think that the prosecutor should be able to use the CSAM ex-abuse conviction as an aggravating factor. That's basically what they're saying, and that's what they're arguing against. Very interesting stuff. Big shout out to everybody who's joining. We have 444 people joining us right now in this live with just 280 likes. Tag, you guys are a tough crowd. You guys are a tough crowd. If there's any one of you 444 people that I have happened to offend, I would like to tell you from the bottom of my heart that I apologize. I apologize for offending you so much. You can't hit that like button. Please do hit that like button if you don't mind. It's 11:49 p.m. Eastern time, and I'm spending my night with you instead of tucking my wife in like Tina is tucking in her husband. So please do show me some love, guys. Hit that like button. Let's keep going. The capital felony was committed while the defendant was engaged in, or let's not misread that, engaged or was an accomplice. This is something that's different here because they didn't have to use this language. No, they did. They're just quoting the subsection D. So no, I'm mistaken. I'm sorry. So let's keep going. The defendant was engaged or was an accomplice in the commission of or an attempt to commit or flight after committing or committing to or attempting to commit any robbery, sexual battery, aggravated child abuse, abuse of an elderly or disabled adult, resulting in great bodily harm, permanent disability, or permanent disfigurement, arson, burglary, kidnapping, aircraft piracy, or unlawful throwing, placing, or discharging of a destructive device or bomb. The statutory aggravating circumstance is unconstitutional as written under the Constitution of Florida and the United States Constitution because the last culpable form of first-degree murder can be used as the sole basis to impose capital punishment in Florida in violation of the prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. As written and applied, 921.141 subsection 6 subsection D, Florida state violates Article 1, Section 9 and 17 of the Florida Constitution as set forth in the memorandum of law that accompanies this motion. Number 3, evolving standards of decency prohibit execution for felony murder. The felony murder aggravator does not narrow the class of death-eligible offenders to the most deserving. This kind of like goes through with all the state different laws that kind of like they're saying, hey, listen, This is unconstitutional. I will leave this up for you guys to read it. Once again, it will be on my Patreon free of charge. The reason why I screen free, because there's going to be some knucklehead who's going to come into my life and they're going to say, oh, Strategic, how dare you charge somebody to go on your Patreon and see these free court documents? And I'm going to say, you numbskull, you were not paying attention, because I clearly said that it's for free on the Patreon. And some other knucklehead is going to say, Strategic, you have to pay for Patreon. And I'm going to say, no, you don't. Don't have to pay for Patreon. It reminds me of that old Looney Tunes cartoon video. It was like a Labrador. And he says, have you ever seen a Labrador? And then Plucky's like, no, I haven't seen a Labrador. He's like, have you ever heard a Labrador? He's like, no, I haven't seen a Labrador. He's like, then shut up. Listen, we're fair, and we try and be as generous and kind with you guys as possible, because we love you guys and we appreciate you. Without you guys, we're nothing here on YouTube. So please do, when I tell you something's free, it's free. All right. So Patreon is free. Go sign up for it. You don't have to put any credit card information that I know of. You sign up for a free account with Patreon. You can just start following people on Patreon. Follow True Crime with Strategic Eyes Show, because we do drop a lot of free things for people on Patreon. So you're not paying for a subscription. We'll still be able to take advantage of the free things that we drop on our Patreon. Keep going. So we'll leave this up to you guys to review it, because this is a deep read right here. This one's no joke. But it pretty much said what I told you guys, that they're going to be citing these different court cases. You see it here, the Atkins versus Virginia, Kennedy versus Louisiana, Roper versus Simmons. These are all court cases that they're going to cite to kind of say, hey, listen, this is unconstitutional. Please don't kill Stephan. Don't kill him. Don't kill him. Isn't that a face you want to live? That's the kind of face that you want to live. Let's zoom in. Look at that beautiful, handsome guy. That's a face you want to live. They're doing their best to keep Stephan Stearns alive, ladies and gentlemen. They're doing their best to keep Stephan Stearns alive. So that's what pretty much they're working with right now, guys. I appreciate you guys. You guys want to do a late call-in show? I'm with it. I don't know. Aki always says I'm not with it. She always says no. No call-in show. No call-in show. Not today. I'm not in the mood. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in the mood. I'm just going to do a quick call-in show. Take 2 or 3 calls. The call-in show is now live. The software is now booting up. You guys saw it over there. Consider calling in. Let's do it. Let me get my background back to me. We're going to be doing another show tomorrow before I go to work. We're going to be talking about, I haven't decided which one I want to talk about. We're actually going to talk about Naziah Harris. There's a lot of updates to do on that one. Or we're going to be talking about that helicopter and American Airlines crash that occurred in Washington, D.C. And there's another crash that happened in Philadelphia. I think for that one, I might have to get the hat. I have to get the hat for that one, because I don't really like what I'm seeing. A lot going on right now, and I'm gonna have to get the tinfoil hat out for that one. So whichever one we do, if I don't do whichever one I don't do tomorrow, I'll end up doing on Sunday. So whichever one I don't do tomorrow, I'm gonna do on Sunday. So you're either gonna get the Naziah Harris show during the live before I go to work, or you're gonna get the tinfoil hat show, where we're just trying to get down to the bottom of this as to why this happened. Because I watched the video. The video's also up on my Patreon. That video is free for everybody, because obviously that's a video that's out there. It's not exclusive. So you want to check that out, go join the Patreon. We watched on the Patreon. We watched that helicopter literally fly into that plane. That plane was not even heading towards that helicopter. That helicopter was heading towards that plane. And I want to understand what's going on. I want to figure this out with you guys, because you guys are smarter people than me. Maybe you guys can help me figure it out. And then supposedly now we got well, it's not supposedly it happened, but why did it happen? We have another crash in Philly, in a major city. What's the odds of that? Big fireball in DC, big fireball in Philly. Interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Call in right now. We got 518-639-6283. It might be too late to ask for a call-in show. You guys might be like, nah, man, I got my sleepy voice in. I am not trying to talk to you right now, Strategic. But if you don't mind us hearing your sleepy voice, call on in. We want to hear from you. 518-639-6283. Not going to take too many calls, but if people call in, we'll take a few. 518-639-6283. Let me know what you guys feel about Stephan Stearns trying his best to dodge the death penalty. You'd think that after what he did to Madeline Soto, that he'd be ready to accept death, but that just doesn't seem like it's the case. Doesn't seem like it's the case at all. David said the F-35 went down. We saw that video too, but those F-35s constantly crash. I think that's probably like the worst fighter we ever made. Don't get me wrong, it's our most technologically advanced fighter, absolutely, but I think it's our worst fighter because they're constantly crashing. I never heard of F-16s crashing like that before. So I don't even know if that would warrant the tinfoil hat. I think that's just poor craftsmanship. But when you have a helicopter literally fly into a plane, what's going on? Where did that helicopter come from? I'm hearing from some sources it came from a base. I'm hearing from other sources that it took off from Saudi Arabia's embassy. I don't know what to believe, but I need to do more research and we need to talk about this together. No, I don't know. We're going to figure it out together, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to figure it out. All right, so we haven't got any calls in, so we'll just leave that be. So what time is this? An hour-long show? I got to get out of here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and take a shower and do my thing and just relax. I think tonight is the night, because I don't drink like that, but I'm going to enjoy an amaretto sour. I like to make my own amaretto sour. I mean, I don't make my own amaretto, the alcohol. I obviously purchased the amaretto, but I'm going to make my own amaretto sour, and I'm going to go to bed. That's what I'm going to do. I love that amaretto sour. So delicious. Such a smooth. Anyway, guys, you guys are amazing. I had a great show with you guys. So thank you so much for showing up. 444 people. We kind of just held that steadily, which is awesome because usually it fluctuates. It goes down, it goes up. No, 444 people tuned in and hanged out with me. I think that's awesome. So please make sure you hit that like button on your way out the door. Consider becoming a member of Strategic Eyes Show. The lowest tier is 99 cents. It's very affordable. It does go up. You get more stuff the higher you go in tier, but we do appreciate everybody who supports us in any way that they can. And of course, I talked about the Patreon a lot, so I don't need to talk about it, but the Patreon is just $5, just one tier, $5 for the Patreon. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So consider becoming a member of the Patreon. We appreciate you guys immensely. Our purpose here is to bring a voice to the voiceless. So keep that in mind when you join us on True Crime with Strategic. Big shout out to David with the massive super chat. Thank you so much for breaking bread with me today, David. You are amazing. To everybody else who showed love with their super chats, we thank you as well. Small donors, big donors, doesn't matter. We value you equally because you all believe in the mission. You believe in what we're trying to accomplish here, which is to basically bring awareness to these crimes. Other than that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Big shout out to all my moderators. Please do consider giving my moderators some coffee. They do a hard job keeping this chat clean. All we do all day, me as well as Aki, is we go through, we're getting notifications at all times of the day as we're living our real lives as to the comments that people are putting on the show. And we're working our best to keep these trolls and these evil, dark souls that exist on the internet away from you fine people. We're not stifling freedom of speech. We're not stopping you from disagreeing with us. What we're stopping people from doing is being evil, for being morbid, being macabre, for being disrespectful. We're trying to foster a safe environment and a safe culture for this channel, and it's working. But it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time. So we got to give a big shout out to our moderators, which includes David, Aki, Erica B, and all the folks, Jules from Australia. She doesn't really catch our lives because of the time difference, but she still helps out moderating on the back end. We appreciate these folks. They do an amazing job. And one way that you can show some love to them is to give them some coffee, a little bonus, a little something so that they could feel special, so that they could go treat themselves and definitely know that their time is worth it and is valuable. That being said, guys, big shout out to Puerto Fitness. Thank you so much, Puerto, for showing love. Big shout out to a child of God who's now a recruit. Thank you so much for becoming a recruit and supporting the channel. Calling it a day, guys. So we see you on the next one. See you guys tomorrow morning sometime, late morning. We'll do another live. Strategic. No. It wouldn't be a show if I didn't have the outro not queued up before I tried to get out of here. All right. We queued it up now. See you on the next one. Strategic is out of here. Peace. Guess what? I was leaving. I'm leaving. We got like 10 more minutes of the show, man. Nah, you know what? I should do it for the members only. That's what. I do a little video for the members only. Tell you guys how I really feel about some of the stuff that we were talking about the last few days. Anyway, you guys have a good night. See you on the next one. Peace.